I know you're excited. I just want to pass the baton over to Hector del Castillo, Chief Product Officer at BoldPM. I've had the pleasure of working with Hector on a few things, and I know he's at Product Camp DC. And he will be sharing with us about your first 90 days in a new product role. Take it away, Hector.
Well, thank you so much, and welcome, everyone. I wanted to remind everyone there will be Q&A, and if you have any questions, submit them via the chat, and then we'll get to them before the end of today's discussion. But real quick, this is meant for those of you who are in the middle of transitioning to a new product role, whether it's a new product management role or product-related role. It applies to any of the product-related titles that are out there today. And we're going to be discussing the first 90 days based on what we've been seeing in the last few years post-COVID-19. First thing is, what is everybody else talking about today post-COVID-19? And it's about building personal resilience. And as a product manager, resilience is not just about getting over your setbacks. It's about getting up and continuing on and with the things that are the right things to do and choosing those right things to do and then setting the direction for your product team. And Steve Jobs is a perfect example of how he bounced back when he was at the helm of Apple, was ousted from Apple, intending to never come back. And then he was asked to come back a few years ago when Apple was in trouble and came back and actually started what became the first trillion-dollar company. So it's a perfect example of resilience when you're bouncing back from things in adverse conditions. So first thing is we're going to talk about current situation, your first 90 days. We're going to talk about 5 different phases and then key takeaways and then Q&A. So current situation, here's what most people are talking about has happened to product managers because there's a higher demand. And often there's a lack of the right talent to be brought into organizations. And in some cases, organizations are doing different things to kind of deal with the scarcity of the talent in product management. And often it's about organizations expecting greater visibility into what you do as a product manager and providing or accessing, getting access to timely and deeper understanding and actual acceptance of customer and user information. These are all things that are being talked about. And of course, it's about not only increasing the resiliency of your organization, it starts with building your personal resilience and then empowering your team, your product team, to also have resilience, higher resilience. Here are some of the top challenges that most everybody has talked about. And just as an FYI, if you can share via the chat, which one of these have you encountered post-COVID-19 in your product if you're in a product role? Have you encountered lost sales, canceled orders, changing and shifting seismic changes in customer and user behavior and their needs, changing the dynamics in the way you interact with customers, disrupted product launches, delayed milestones for some of the functionality and features that were planned, reduce team capacity because now you have less people in your organization, and that may also impact what you do and don't do as an organization and with your product team. New collaboration requirements, supply chain disruptions, and a changing competitive landscape. Type in the chat if you can share any of these that you have encountered. You may have encountered more than these in your product in your current role. And maybe you're coming into an organization that is also being impacted by any combination of these challenges, because this all happened post-COVID-19 economy. And what about meeting expectations from organizations? A great and effective product manager has to have deep knowledge across all 4 of these domains. Clear understanding about your customer and your user and what they do, what are their pain points, what are they expecting out of your product? What is the perceived value from those stakeholders? Deeper knowledge about your business and your business model, and specifically, how are you going to position your product in a changing competitive landscape? Deeper knowledge about your industry, that includes your market and your targets, market segments, customer segments, and what does expansion mean and what's next for your product? Where is it today and where is next for your product? And then, of course, deeper knowledge about success metrics for your product. And maybe it's about not just one product, but your entire product line or your entire product portfolio if you're in a more senior role within product. So these are some of the things that you would be expecting you come on board as you're coming into a new role. All of these things may change. Industry and market may change. Your product portfolio and the strength of your product portfolio changes. Your business model may also be changing. And then also your target customers and users may also change as well. So you have to very early on prepare for meeting all four of these areas. And also there are major risks. Understanding the customer perceived value versus the organization's expectations about the product value that you're delivering into the market. Those are two different things sometimes. They don't necessarily align all the time. And then also about the usability of your product. How easy is it for your users to actually use your product with very little training, very little knowledge about what's underneath the product itself. And then the viability of your business model. And what are the COGS, what are the cost structure and the ROI and profitability, but also how are you doing compared to industry average and for your market average for the same products? And then feasibility, how easy is it for your product team to maintain or implement new changes and new improvements to your current product? These are all things that you need to assess very early on. It's about risk management in product. And as a new product manager in a new role or in a new organization, you need to assess these risks very early on. So let's talk about what I would say it's your 90-day roadmap to ensure that in the first 90 days of coming into any product role, that you actually are effective in establishing yourself and getting a strong reputation that you are a can-do type of product manager as you're coming on board a new organization. And we're going to talk about 5 different phases, starting from the bottom: prepare, assess, plan, act, and measure. So let's talk about prepare. In preparation, and this is roughly the duration here is going to be discussed as well, maybe 10 to 15 days. And sometimes the more changes across those 4 domains of expertise, your industry is changing significantly, the product portfolio that you're managing is changing compared to your experience, different data metrics and different performance metrics that you're being measured on. And all those things that are part of assessing it very early on, you need to assess. And it starts with the people, the culture within the organization, the vision for the product, and what is the enunciation? And do you have a clear product strategy within the new organization that you're about to come into? And that all may impact the positioning of your product in the market. But also, it's about understanding from the people point of view, let's make sure that you understand what your first priority is going to be in the next 90 days. And that is setting objectives for your product and for yourself as a product manager. You need to do both, not just one or the other. And that's a preparation phase. In assessing, you need to now assess across those 5 things that are critical. And that is the people, the processes or lack of processes, either too many processes or lack of processes can be an issue. And also understanding buyer behavior and customers and users both. And that is the first thing that you need to do in the assessment phase. Understand what is the customers and users' perception of value of the product that they're buying from you, and understanding their needs and their challenges and what is next for them. This is all part of assessment. But then very quickly, as you begin planning what's next for your product and putting together your first version of a product roadmap, is assessing things like your competition, your level of competition, any new competition, but also your collaborators in the market in your industry. And that includes not just on the supply side, your partners, your suppliers, but it also may include distribution channels, which are part of your marketing and sales. Sometimes you may not necessarily have the luxury to sell directly to customers. Often you may have intermediaries, which are other organizations that are actually helping you sell quicker, sell faster, and establish the right relationships with your target customers. And you need to assess all those things before you start figuring out the changes. Make sure you have a holistic view of why you need to make improvements and the priorities to set. But also it's about understanding what are the needed product metrics and whether or not you need to have new metrics for your product. Often I find that in many organizations, you may have deficiency in the product metrics, and you're either measuring the wrong thing or you're measuring things that are not of concern to your customers and users. And you need to make sure that those are updated as well. But also that all of this can actually influence the direction of your product, the vision, and the strategy as to how you're going to get to where you're at today to where you're going next. And then it's obviously about very early on, not just establishing and identifying stakeholders internal to your organization. It's about establishing and building relationships internal, but then also beginning to build relationships with all those external stakeholders that are also critical to your ability to perform. And that includes the supply side, outside organizations that are suppliers and partners, and also distribution channels, experts and analysts in the market that are tracking what you do to help you determine what you do and what you don't do next with your product. All of this allows you to get a holistic view, so you actually start putting together your first version of the roadmap. And hopefully by then, you can now have enough information to choose what is the one major functionality, one major product feature that you need to prioritize for your product team and get it done very quickly. And a product feature, by definition, is not going to be something that you can implement in just a single iteration if you're using agile methodology. It might take you a handful of iterations before you actually have a viable and marketable feature that is complete in accordance to what your customers and users are expecting. And often that may take the rest of the time, and now you're in the implementation phase of that product. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that you build and empower your product feature team so that they can start performing, and then advertise to your managers and upper management, senior managers, executives, why this particular feature is critical for the organization, and make sure you give them the right status as you're implementing that particular feature. And then finally, continuing to engage your customers and users so you can get into early testing and get early feedback as soon as you have something that they can actually provide you some feedback on, because sometimes you might need to pivot. And often it's you've got to identify the right stakeholders that are customers and users that are willing to give you the right feedback at the right time. Finally, you go into the measure phase. Now you're actually measuring your metrics, and you're keeping track and reporting to everyone within the organization. Not only your product team, but your peers, your senior managers and executives need to know what are the milestones and how well you're going, and make sure that they understand what is the goal and the objective of that particular feature that you're developing. But also be prepared to pivot quickly. Fail fast, fail often, fail forward. And in order to do that, you need to be prepared to make quick adjustments as you need to improve the outcomes. And then begin working on your product development priorities and make sure you have the right processes in place and the right tools as you're measuring and implementing success. That in a nutshell is the 5 different phases. So kind of the key takeaways: the first 90 days are critical for you to establish yourself and a strong reputation as a product manager, as a can-do and exceptional product manager that can get things done. Number 1, you're going to be building your relationships internally with the right stakeholders, everyone from your peers to senior managers to executives within the organization. Building a product team, and you need to be a great team builder, and setting the right one-on-ones on a regular basis to make sure that you're reporting status about what's going on, why you're making those decisions, and how you're going to continue ensure that you're actually getting things done and going in the right direction for your product. And then finally, looking at building and updating your roadmap very early on, and then creating the right environment to actually start aligning propose incremental changes with early wins, and make sure that you can get at least one early win, and that is the product feature that you're going to prioritize and get it done in the first 90 days of you coming on board. So that in itself is my presentation for today. I wanted to leave enough time for questions because I would be expecting that majority of you would have questions if you are in the middle of planning a new transition into a new organization, or you're shifting into a new a product management role for the first time, or you may want to be, you're moving into what is a promotion, going from a senior product manager or experienced product manager level to the next level within a new organization. And now you're dealing with some of these things that you need to understand how to actually execute and become an exceptional product manager in a new organization. And here's my contact information as well. You can either email me, you can actually follow me on LinkedIn. This is the URL to my LinkedIn profile, or you can follow me on Twitter as well. And do we have any questions at this point?
Yes, thank you so much, Hector, for a great presentation. We do have a question from Eugene Barlas. What is the biggest misstep you see with new senior product people?
So often what I see is that they think they can just, that product management is one size fits all. And that can be either, you're coming into an organization that has this mindset, or you're coming from an organization that has this mindset that, this particular product category, this particular industry and market, you always follow the same guidelines and rules. And that's one of the biggest faults, because you've got to realize that product management is an evolving role, and it's going to continue to, it has been changing for the last 20 years. And as there's more changes in market and more changes in industry that are impacting widespread across, change is happening, and it's not just constant change, it's accelerating change rate. And you need to make sure that you evolve as a product manager and that you understand the trends and challenges that and how quickly they actually change in order for you to become effective and coming on board and start identifying who are the right players that you need to recruit into your team that will actually help you prove that you're setting the right direction and you're making the right decisions, and that it's not just you as a product manager, it's the entire team making these decisions about what to do and what not to do. That in itself is the essence of product management. It's about not only understanding the direction of what the product needs to go next and why, but understand also what is not going to give you the value that your organization is looking for.
Okay.
Great question.
Wonderful. And I have more of a comment from Evgeny, if I've said that right, who says, from the trench, facing reduced team capability due to a shrunk headcount, addressing it by improving engineering processes, but still we have to reduce the scope and manage expectations. Do you have any comments on that?
That is so true. And it's happening where organizations often, as they're downsizing, they expect the same priorities, the same things to be happening with no changes. And that is unrealistic. So often, if you're coming on board into an organization that has recently experienced some shrinkage and loss of team capacity, and then you're saying, well, wait a minute, we need to now change everything as far as roadmaps for the entire product portfolio. And then you need to be clear as to what is the one top priority that we can focus on that is still within the range of the scope, the schedule, and the budget that we now have, because it has changed. And it's just part of product management 101, understanding that the less players you have in a team, you're not going to be able to get it all done. And now you need to reprioritize and realign priorities to ensure that you're meeting the top things that the organization wants to accomplish in the next 2 to 3 years. And that it means that you need to make sure that you're measuring everything, and that sometimes you need to throw out and not only unlearn things that have been done for a long time within an organization. It's about relearning as well, and then making sure that you're building your team with the right players. And I think that's really critical. As a product manager, you need to be a an exceptional team builder, realize that product management is a team sport, not an individual. It never is. Most people try to glorify one person, saying, that one person is responsible for the success of an entire product. That's wrong. Even Steve Jobs had not just a single team. He had hundreds of teams as he had evolved Apple from being a Mac producer to the next widget of things that were launched after he came back. That includes the iPhone, the iPod, the Apple TV box, all those things that have come after the original Mac. All those things require hundreds of teams, not just a single team. And actually, by market, they are self-divided because markets behave differently. You can't position a product in one market the same way that you position it in a different market, because even if the product remains the same, there are different reasons why people are buying that product and how they're using it. And you need to make sure that you cater the way you position that product to regional preferences of your customers and users. And so all of these things mean that you really need to start building teams that are very targeted, very specific, and that you understand what is the right way to succeed in any market in your industry.